Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I'm going to be doing kind of a review of the series A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin. And the reason why I say this is kind of a review is because typically when I do my reviews for series or trilogies or whatever, it's for ones that I have finished or have at least, caught up on. Even though I haven't reviewed that many, anytime that I do usually do a review, it's going to be for something that I have read everything that there is for it, whether it be finished or still incomplete. But in this case, I actually have not finished the series, but I still want to talk about it. And I'm also going to kind of talk a little bit about why I haven't finished the series and why I may be putting it down for a little while. But anyways, to get into actually talking about this series, of course, this is a very popular series that got adapted into the TV show Game of Thrones, which I haven't seen, but I would like to watch at some point. I just haven't seen it as of this moment. And the books were very popular, very well known, very well liked within the fantasy community. And I can definitely see why that's the case. So I guess I'm going to kind of go book by book a little bit here. So the first book is A Game of Thrones. So this is where the TV show obviously gets its title. And it is maybe my favorite of the bunch. It's hard to say between this one and the second book. I read this one and I absolutely loved it. The main thing for me that really stands out as being a particular pro, I guess, for this book and for the whole series in general, really, is the characters. To me, A Song of Ice and Fire, including this book, but really all of them, for me is very much more a character series rather than a plot series. To be honest, I have never found the plots, for the most part, that interesting in the series, but the thing that kept me going and the thing I really enjoyed about the series was the characters. And in A Game of Thrones, you get introduced to most of the recurring characters across the series, at least so far, and many of whom are my favorites. You get introduced to characters like Tyrion Lannister, Jon Snow, the Stark children, like Arya and Sansa and Bran. You get Daenerys. You also get Eddard Stark in this book, who is arguably my favorite character across the series. Although I would say probably Tyrion or Jon Snow would probably take that spot, considering Eddard Stark is not in the entire series. But one of those two would probably be my favorite, but he's definitely like top 3 somewhere. And it does a very good job of establishing the world and all the stuff going on, all the characters, all that stuff. The plot of it just didn't really grab me that much. And again, that's kind of the case for most of the books in this series. But I think this one, more so than some of the others, like there's not really any plot events that I really remember all that well from the first book. I mean, there's a couple for sure, but in general, it's this one for me was more so characters rather than plot. Moving on to the second one, I have very much kind of the same feelings about the second book as the first book. While the first book, I would say, at least in my opinion, was more so the Eddard Stark book. The second book, I think, is very much Tyrion and Jon Snow. Were really kind of the characters that really drew me in the second book, especially Tyrion. I think Tyrion's parts in the second book, which was, what's it called? Clash of Kings. I completely forgot to say the title of the book. I thought was really good. And again, not a whole lot of plot stuff that I really remember super vividly from this one. There are certain plot things from the other books that I do remember a bit more vividly, but this one, again, mostly character stuff. Again, I love Tyrion in the second book. He's one of my favorite characters in the series in general, and he was pretty much right from the start, but this one definitely solidified that for me and made him definitely like a top 3 character, like I said. Since a lot of my thoughts are kind of the same between the first two, I'm going to move on to book 3, which was A Storm of Swords. So A Storm of Swords, I was kind of half and half on a little bit. The first third to half of it, I thought was just okay. It wasn't really grabbing me. Really, that's kind of the case, I think, with all of them. That where they took a little while to really get going for me, but especially the third book just took a while for me to really get into it. And the second half, or however much of it was, I absolutely loved. So it's kind of a difficult one for me because based on the first half of it, I didn't like it so much, but based on the second half, I probably preferred the second half of A Storm of Swords, if not over the entirety of the first 2 books, at least on the same level, even though in general I like the third book less because of that stuff that I didn't care as much for. But A Storm of Swords has several big events within it that were really interesting and stuff that I really enjoyed. And there are a lot more things that happen in this book, at least for me, that more stand out. The second book, I completely forgot to mention, did have like a big part at the end that I think was like some kind of big battle that I really did enjoy. But anyways, yeah, book 3 for me was, again, kind of half and half. I did really love like the second half, or however much it was, but the first half kind of brought it down for me. And then we come to book 4, which is A Feast for Crows, which, if you have seen my least favorite books that I read in 2022 video, you would know this was my least favorite book overall that I read in 2022. This one just really dropped the ball for me. And I think it's not solely the reason why I decided that I'm probably not going to finish the series, at least right now. But I think it definitely contributed to kind of killing my excitement for it, because I just did not care about basically anything that happened in A Feast for Crows. And I think there is a very clear reason for that, because the 4th and 5th books, A Feast for Crows and Dance with Dragons, George Martin decided that he was going to basically split one story into 2 parts, taking place alongside each other, so they take place at the same time. He decided to put certain characters in one book and then the rest of the characters in the other book. Unfortunately, in A Feast for Crows, most of the characters he decided to put into that book were the ones that I did not really care about. And again, like I said earlier, the thing that really kept me going with the series was the characters. So if there weren't any characters that I wasn't interested in that book, I mean, there was 1 or 2, but they actually got far less time in that book than many of the other characters did. Characters like Samwell and Arya, and 1 or 2 others that were in that book, but they got very few chapters compared to like Cersei and Jaime, who are characters I just didn't care much for. That really kind of brought it down a lot for me, because even though I love the characters in the series, if you're gonna focus on mostly the characters I don't care about, I'm probably not going to care about the book. So that really kind of hurt that book for me and the series in general. And that, of course, brings me to book 5, A Dance with Dragons. So this is kind of the part where I talk about why I currently am not planning to finish the series, at least anytime soon. So A Dance with Dragons, I started it back in December. I hoped to finish the whole series, at least what's currently out, by the end of last year. It is now mid-February, and I have not yet done that, so clearly I didn't manage to meet that goal. But I got like a couple hundred pages into this one, and it's one of the longest books in the series. It's like 1,000 pages or something like that. So even though I got 200 pages in, I really didn't put that much of a dent into it. But I read a decent amount of it, and I was enjoying it quite a bit. I thought that what I had read was already better than the entire 4th book, and I was really enjoying this one. But I just really lost the motivation to keep going, and I don't know if that's because some parts of A Storm of Swords plus all of A Feast for Crows just let me down so much, or if I'm just was getting burnt out on the series. I don't know what it was, but I just completely lost motivation to continue onward, even though I was enjoying A Dance with Dragons. And so this is a series that, at least for now, I have no current plans to continue with, at least in terms of finishing up book 5. I'm sure I will probably do it eventually, especially when or if the next book comes out, and hopefully the series gets finished sometime within the next few decades at this rate, maybe. But I will probably revisit it and finish up what is there. I just have no plans to do so anytime soon because, again, I'm just not motivated enough to finish the series right now. And I know it's just one more book and I'm so far in and I might as well just do it, but I'm just not interested in it right now. And that kind of sucks because, again, I really enjoyed several parts of this series, especially the characters. Some of the characters in this series are among my favorite fantasy characters that I have read so far, but I just don't care about continuing it right now, so I just don't think I'm going to anytime soon. But to kind of get back onto a little bit more positive note, my thoughts on the series as a whole are definitely more positive than negative, even though there have been some low points for sure. In general, I would say I do like the series, especially the first 2 books and parts of the 3rd book. But again, it's not a series that I'm like absolutely in love with. It's not one that I am itching to finish or anything like that. But it's one that I would recommend checking out. But anyways, that is pretty much it for this video. So let me know down in the comments what you think of this series. How kind of are you feeling about it? Did you kind of get burnt out on it, kind of like I did, or just kind of eventually decide you were just gonna stop with it? Let me know down in the comments. And that's pretty much it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.